Yasmela. The blood of the kings of Conan runs in your veins, mine and your mother's. Whatever comes for you in this world, and however it comes, you will always know how to take care of yourself.
Execute.
Ishkandrel, Moruveth, consume.
Conan stepped back from it. He did not draw it out. He did not speak its name. He gave it to the snow and the silence. Then the Pale One came forward. She crossed the open ground without sound, the way cold crosses a threshold, not seen to move, only found nearer. The firelight took the silver of her and gave nothing back warm. The clans in her path drew away without deciding to. She stopped at the standing blade. She did not reach for it the way a warrior reaches. She closed her hand over the grip the way a hand closes on a thing it once forged and set down, and drew the Unmaker up out of the ice. It did not turn on her. The hollow saw that it did not. The iron that unmade things rested quiet in her fist, the gem at the guard throwing back the fire, and every man on the slope understood in his gut what his mind had no words for. The blade knew her and did not object to being known. Then she spoke, and the voice was hers, and it was older than hers, coming up through her the way meltwater comes up through stone.
I stood on the towers of Acheron when they broke.
The hollow did not understand the words. It understood the cold beneath them.
I wore the shape of a king in that age. Valiron, they called me. Pale as I stand pale now. And I watched the young blood come up out of the mud my own kind had made of it. Small, countless, owed nothing and given less. They had learned one thing the sorcerer kings had not troubled to teach them, and it was the only clean thing in all that age of dye and cloth and spending.
A breath.
They wanted to be free, and they were willing to die to be it.
The fire cracked.
That is a pure thing. There is nothing purer under the wheel. I had worn 100 shapes by then, and I had not often seen it, a people who would rather end than kneel. I saw it come up the steps of Python with an axe in its hand.
Her crimson eyes moved once across the gathered clans.
And I did not stay it.
She let that stand in the snow.
I was the champion. The champion does not serve a throne, or a blood, or a name. The champion serves the turning. I had felt the wheel come round under that age, the way you feel the ice change before it gives. The demand was plain. The old strong things were finished, and the young blood was the hand chosen to finish them. So I did not lift a sorcery to save my own kind. I bared my throat to the hand that rose, and as it fell, I spoke the debt that would come due, so the turning would carry it. That was the act, not the fighting, the letting go. A champion's whole duty in one breath, to know the hour and not to cling.
She looked then to Conan. 1 breath, no longer, and away.
Your first father did more than I asked of him.
The wind moved through the standing stones.
He led your blood up those steps and ended the oppression as the wheel demanded. That alone would have been enough to sing him 3,000 years. But the killing did not close the door. Something had crawled into Hyboria through the wound of that falling age and made itself a home in the dark under the world. And a door like that is not shut with iron, it is shut with blood, freely given. So the hand that struck the last blow opened its own veins over the seam and gave its breath to the seal. He bought the world its worst night kept shut and paid for it with the only coin the dark accepts.
A breath.
That is the fist your clans are named for. The hand that clenched against the dark and did not open again while it lived.
Her gaze went south, past them all, to nothing they could see.
The South knew this. Conan held its share of the pact in the knowing, eyes open, throat bared, the way I held mine. When the dark came looking for the seam again, Castrim met it as an appointment kept, not a robbery suffered.
Then the crimson came back to the fire, to the 2 men beside it.
And the lineage of the fist, the very blood that bled the world its seal, walked off the watch, set the clenched hand to its own throat, made feud where there had been vigil and hierarchy where there had been duty, and called the rot peace because it wore the clothes of the old names.
The fire spat.
3,000 years I carried this to lay it at your fire.
She turned the blade in her hand once and set it back into the ice where Conan had set it. Upright, waiting.
Now the door is opening, and the blood that was born to hold it will hold it, or be shown before every clan on this slope for what it let itself become.
She stepped back from the standing iron.
Take it up, all of you who owe the watch, 1 hand at a time.
And she left it there, in the white, for the first Cimmerian hand to reach for. Kulrath laughed. It broke rough out of him, too loud for the bowl, and it rang wrong the way a struck pot rings wrong, a sound reaching for scorn and catching only on its own edge. A sorcerer. He said it to the slope, not to her, turning it outward, the way he turned everything outward, to the thousands on the cold. A pale conjurer walks out of the dark with a dead man's blade and a tale of towers no living eye has seen, and we are meant to shake? Acheron, seals, blood 3,000 years cold. He spread his hands to his people, inviting the laugh he needed them to share. This is a ghost story for children, winter tales dressed in old iron to frighten grown men off their own fire. He had done it 1,000 times. Take the thing you cannot answer and make it small. Make it a trick, a tale, a conjurer's noise, so the men watching laugh instead of weigh, and the weight of the charge is lost in the laughing. He waited for the hollow to laugh with him. It did not. Morlana smiled. It was worse than the words had been. There was no heat in it, no offense taken, only the patience of a thing that has heard this exact laugh before, in other mouths, in other ages, from other men standing exactly where the ground was already open beneath them.
A sorcerer.
She let his own word rest in the cold a moment, turning nothing, needing to turn nothing.
Then I have made your road easy, Cimmerian.
She did not come toward him. She looked at the blade in the ice and then at him, and that was the whole of it.
You need not believe one word I have spoken. Not Acheron, not the seal, not the dead at your door. Call it a ghost story. Call me a conjurer with a borrowed blade.
A breath.
I ask nothing of your believing.
The fire cracked between them.
I ask only this. Cross the ground, take the iron in your hand. The same iron, the dead man's blade, the conjurer's track, and speak your truth holding it. If what you are is true, the true thing will not object to your holding it.
She let it stand.
Words without the act behind them are wind, Cimmerian. Wind even to the men you spend them on. You know this. You have lived by it. You have sent boys to die on the strength of it. So do the small thing. Take the blade. Say who you are.
Her crimson held him, unhurried.
Or is that too much iron for a Cimmerian's hand?
The silence that came down on the hollow was not the silence of men waiting. It was the silence of men who had already decided and were only letting the condemned hear it. It rang back at Culrath like the fall of an axe. His mind went scrabbling along the walls of it, for the old iron, the exile word, the tale that made the charge small, the trick of turning the slope's eyes where he wanted them. 40 years he had never once been without a way out. He searched now the way a man searches a familiar room gone suddenly dark, hands out, finding only where the walls used to be. There was nothing there. And in his gut, beneath the searching, the cold, flat fact he had buried under 40 years of forgetting stood back up and looked at him. This is where it ends. Mordach had not moved. Mordach had not spoken since the road opened, and he did not speak now. He had counted the same count Culrath was only this moment reaching, and he had counted it long ago, and reached the bottom of it while the other was still telling himself the ground was flat. He looked, not at the blade, not at the pale one, at the slope, at the lower clans, at the thin hearths and the grey elders and the small bloods ringed back in the standing stones, and he read their faces the way a chief learns to read faces, and he saw in them what a man sees when a debt he has carried a long time finally comes to be paid in front of him. He saw the ones they had broken, the ones bent under two chiefs' reach until they submitted, because the ones who did not submit were taken out into the cold and did not come back. The strong ones spent, the proud ones executed and called something else, the rest left living, because living had cost them the thing that made a Cimmerian, and they had paid it hearth by hearth, year by year, and swallowed it. They were all watching. And Mordach saw that this had been a long time coming, and that it had come, and that it wore the shape of a blade standing in the ice. He stepped forward. Kulrath watched him go, watched him cross the open ground the way a man watches something he cannot follow and cannot call back. And Mordach did not look at him, and did not look at his son, and did not look at the slope he had helped to break. He reached the iron. He did not speak. There was no defense in him to speak, and he did not reach for one. And that, the not reaching, was the whole of his account. He had carried the yoke his whole life because his father set it on him, and he never once set it down. And he set it down now the only way a night wolf could, not with words. Words were what Kulrath had. Mordach had only the act. His hand closed on the hilt. He never got to the speaking. The blade did not wait for it. It had judged the deed and not the mouth, and the deed was already known. And what the Unmaker did, it did in the space of a breath, before a word could be shaped. His form went to ash, not fell, not bled, went, the way the blade sent things out, the way Brack and Vara had watched things that should not die simply cease. There was a shape of a chief with his hand on the iron, and then there was the iron, and the snow coming down through the place where he had been. Brack saw it. The clan saw it. No one made a sound. Then Morlana spoke, and her voice was quiet, and it carried to the rim of the bowl as if she stood at every hearth on the slope at once.
Now that,
she said,
is a Cimmerian who died like one.
Vara came forward. She did not come the way Mordach had come, steady, resolved, a man walking to a thing he had chosen. She came the way one crosses ground one cannot bear to keep standing on, as if the sight of the man by the fire had become a thing her body would no longer hold still beside. She did not look at Kulrath. She went to the ice, and she took the Unmaker up out of it. The hollow drew a breath it did not let go. Vara held the blade. She held it, and she was of Kulrath's own blood, and she turned her gray eyes on the man by the fire, and she spoke. Accusation. The hardest words a mouth could carry, spoken with the Unmaker bare in her fist.
Tell them.
Her voice did not rise. It did not need to.
Tell them why Goran's head sits on a wooden spike outside Makur's high place.
The fire cracked. The iron rested quiet in her hand.
Tell them why the girl who carried his message to Conan is dead, and all her kin with her, at the hands of Goran and the Black Crag.
Quiet in her hand. The gem throwing back the fire. The blade that had sent a chief to ash a breath ago lay in her grip and did not stir, while the worst words in the hollow came out over it.
Tell them, Kulrath of the Snowhawk.
And she drove the Unmaker down into the ice, left it standing, left it waiting. And the hollow understood, all of it, in the space between the blade going into the ground and the silence closing over it, what her holding had just done. The doubt was dead. She had held the iron that unmade the other architect of the winter. She had held it as Snowhawk blood, Kulrath's own line. The one hand in the hollow, a suspicious man could have claimed the blade was made to spare. She had held it, and spoken not her own truth, but his crimes, aloud, naming the dead, and the blade had lain quiet in her fist through every word of it. The Unmaker did not burn the accuser. It did not burn the one who spoke true. It had only ever waited for the one who could not, which left one hand in all the hollow that had not closed on the iron. One man who had been asked and laughed and reached for a tale, and been answered by his own co-chief's ash and his own daughter's steady grip. The blade stood in the ice, and every eye on the slope knew now, past any conjurer's doubt, past any last exile word, exactly what it would do if Kulrath of the Snowhawk ever found the courage to touch it. He would not. Kulrath fell to his knees, not struck down. No hand touched him. The strength simply went out of the legs that had held him upright through 2 generations of other men's silence. And he knelt in the snow by the fire he had ruled, and looked at the ice a handspan from his knees. Only that. He had spent 40 years making the hollow look where he pointed, off murdered messengers and staked heads and daughters run into the cold. He had lived by the aiming of other men's eyes. And now not one eye on the whole frozen slope would come to rest on him. The clans he had broken, his daughter, his own Snowhawk blood, every gaze slid off him to the blade, to the fire, to the north, to anywhere that was not the kneeling man. He was made to not exist. The exact coin he had spent on every hearth he silenced, handed back whole. Not death, not the dignity of a blade, not even the clean weight of a clan's contempt. Only the unseeing. The fire still burned. The snow came down on him with the rest. and the man who had ruled 2 generations of Cimmeria knelt in the middle of it and was nothing. That was the death the architect got, not the blade. The blade was for the one who rose. Conan crossed the ice and drew the Unmaker up out of it. He did not look at Kulrath. No one did. The iron came clean into his fist, the gem throwing back the fire, and for a long moment no one in the hollow spoke. His eyes went from the Pale One to the Queen, caught for the smallest breath on the ox-blood scale and the gold at her throat. And then the corner of his mouth moved, not quite a smile. Now what, Easterner? Shakim came forward. He did not go to the fire. He went to where she stood and stopped a little short of her, the distance a man keeps when he has come to speak a thing he is not certain he has the right to speak.
Champion.
She turned her crimson to him, unhurried.
A door waits. I do not know where it opens. That is the wheel's, and yours where the wheel carries you. It will remain a door for you to reach.
He let it stand. He did not go on. The silence after was the whole shape of the second thing. He had crossed to Oth-Kaldor for her. He had asked her out of a rest he had no measure of, to lay a debt 3,000 years carried into a bowl of men who had failed the watch. She had done it. Her purpose here was paid. To ask the next thing was to ask her to spend beyond what she had been called for. He was crosser enough to know when the asking became a thing a man did not have the standing to do. So he lowered his gaze. Morlana watched him, watched the lowering and the not speaking and the shape of the request he would not shape. Something moved at the corner of her mouth, not quite a smile, the pale kin to one.
Ah,
The syllable had weight this time. Not amusement. Recognition.
That is an old breath, Crosser.
Her voice went quiet, and beneath the quiet was something the Hollow had not yet heard in her. Not the cold of the Tribunal, not the near smile she had spent on Kulrath. Something further back. Something that had lived beside this smell once and remembered the age it belonged to.
Older than these hills. Older than the names the young blood carries. It has the reek of the thing that was locked away when the towers came down. The dark your first father bled to seal, Cimmerian, breathing again through the seam of his own wound.
Her crimson did not leave the north.
I know that breath. I stood in an age when it did not have to hide, when it walked in daylight and called itself sovereign, and the old strong things bowed to it, or were unmade. It went down into a hollow under the world when the seal took, and it has waited there. 3,000 years is a short breath to a thing like that. It has only now remembered it is hungry.
The amusement came back into her voice, but darker now. The amusement of a thing that has recognized an old adversary and is not, in truth, displeased.
And it has found a hand to ride. Some patient rot in the north that has learned the old words well enough to open a door it has no measure of. A rider on the veil, thinking itself the master of the thing that answers. It is not. It never is. The dark uses such hands. It wears them out and takes another.
Her crimson eyes came back to Chekim, and the amusement in them had teeth now.
Whatever the wheel keeps for me on the far side of that door, if it can wait a little longer, it will wait. In Oth Kaldor, the days grew long and the wine grew thin. One forgets in such places what it is to strike without holding the hand back, to spend without counting, to meet an old adversary across an open field, and neither of you obliged to pretend the courtesies of a court that no longer exists.
The near smile reached her eyes.
It would please me very much to remind him.
Then softer, almost kind.
And Crosser, you did not bring a sorceress out of Oth Kaldor. You brought a necromancer of the Amber Court.
The Hollow did not move. They did not know what the Amber Court was. They did not need to. They knew what stood in front of them, and they knew it had chosen to stay. And the silence was the sound of men 5 days short of a tide of the dead, being told the thing at their side had a name the dark had reason to fear. The fire cracked under it. Chekim's gaze had gone back to the snow, not from shame now, but from the small bow of the head a crosser gives when a thing he had no right to ask for is granted anyway, and the granting is done in a form so much larger than the asking that all he can do is receive it without meeting the giver's eyes. Morlana let the silence carry. She turned her face to the north. then past Jakim to Conan, and the Unmaker still bare in his fist.
"Now, Cimmerian,"
she said, and her voice went beneath the silence the way certain quiet things go beneath weather.
"we fight."